Very pleased to welcome in this sense PhD Professor Dragoș Ivan, lawyer in Romania, and he will introduce the session and the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I invite the speaker to have a seat next to me. Meanwhile, just one question for this wonderful audience. Who here wants his voice to be heard? By show of hands, including the speakers as well, although they are guaranteed to have their voice heard. Okay. Who wants here likes to make decisions for him or herself? Who here wants to shape democracy, shape the way we're living? Show of hands. Wow, this is a wonderful, astonishing audience because you're all very proactive. Thank you. It's going to be an interesting debate. All right, so now imagine a world where everybody's voice is being heard, a world where justice prevails, where elections truly represent the will of the people. And today, we are here to delve deep into democracy by analyzing both justice and the electoral process and the way it shapes lives, shapes our societies, and shapes our world, okay? So we'll be doing this with a couple of the best specialists in this field, people that have devoted their lives to protecting democracy and justice, people that held office in authorities, important authorities, that are teachers, that form generations, and they are practicing legal and the rule of law. I would like to start with Ms. Cortac Olga. Thank you for being here. She's director of the Administrative Service of the Legal Research Center in Moldova. I would like to continue with University Professor Edna Raquel Ogeman. She's Dean of the Center for Legal Services of the Federal University of the State of Rio de Janeiro. Thank you for coming. Continue with Professor Marieta Safta, Vice President of the Senate of the UTM University. That is the University of Titu Maiorescu, Bucharest, Romania. Also, University Professor Ovidiu Ioan Dumitru. He's Dean of the Faculty of Law of the University Academy of Economics, Bucharest, Romania. And also University Professor Osvaldo Lima Jr., University of the State of Rio de Janeiro. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for having this debate. A big round of applause. Thank you. First of all, I'm going to ask the guest speakers. I believe that we should start from a broader perspective, like an international context, then focus on the European continent, and then on the European Union and Romania. But first of all, I'm always interested in the constitutional perspective. So I'm going to ask Professor Marieta Safta to tell us about the constitutional perspective on legislative organization of the electoral process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for the invitation and to congratulate the organizer of the forum. I think it's an exceptional event, providing such a great platform for discussions and new ideas, and also for connections for the future projects. I'm very honored to be here today along with the other special guests and to discuss about such important topic, democracy and elections, the trust in democracy. Dragoș invited me to provide a perspective, a constitutional perspective. I'm a former magistrate of the Constitutional Court, so I will try to express some thoughts on this, let's say, constitutional perspective on such important question, how to create trust in elections, how to create trust for good reasons. It's a very special concept, and congratulations for the idea. Because in my opinion, trust for good reasons means acting in good faith, which in terms of institutional relationship means to show constitutional loyalty in all of these dimensions of the complex electoral process, meaning legislation, the conduct of the competitors, electoral competitors, and also of the institutions, the election process in itself, and the election campaign. I will try to say a few words about each of these points, and I will start with the legislation. So, trust in legislation. We are scholars here. Professors of constitutional law, political sciences, and usual in our meetings and debates and conferences, but also you as practitioners, you know that there are so many dysfunctions in terms of lawmaking process and the legislations. But in order to have trust in the elections, we need to have a better legislation in terms of the quality of the legislation. How could we have trust in a legislation changing all the time, and sometimes even in the year of the election, close to the point of the elections? So there are a lot of things to discuss here. Trust of clarity, accessibility of the laws, and let's say familiarity. Because the people, they trust what they know and what they understand very well. But in the same times, we realize that electoral reforms are necessary. So it's important to explain why it's necessary, and to be aware and consider and take measures in order to prevent this kind of distrust of the citizens in front of the new reforms, in front of the new laws. And at the same time, so we have to be aware that some changes and some electoral regulations are not so easy to understand. And sometimes introducing new voting arrangement may take several electoral cycles to be understood and to be predictable. These issues of familiarity is based on stability of the legislation and predictability of the legislation. And here I will remind just in a few words some recommendation of the Code of Good Practice in Electoral Matters adopted by the Venice Commission, where it was stated that the fundamental elements of the electoral law, in particular the electoral system, the main elements, should not be open to amendment less than 1 year before an election, or should be written in the Constitution or at a level higher than ordinary law. It is not about the changing the voting system, but it's about to change this system frequently or just before, within the year of elections. According to the Venice Commission, even when no manipulation is intended, changes will be seen to be dictated by immediate party political interest. This kind of opinion, the opinions of the Venice Commissions were also invoked in the case law of the Constitutional Court of Romania, but in relation with the legal certainty. So it is necessary to analyze in each case when they change the legislation, the electoral legislation close to the election, whether such changes affect legal certainty. As concerned the level of the legislation, our court emphasized the importance of codification in this area, and for years there has been ongoing discussion about the necessity of the electoral code to have all these kind of regulation in electoral matter in one law, not so many laws, in order to confuse the citizens. As concerns the trust in institution, an important concept developed also in the constitutional jurisdiction, also in the opinion of the Venice Commission, is the loyal conduct of the authorities. This is not only about following explicit legal and constitutional provisions, but also about constitutional behavior and practices that support compliance with formal rules by all constitutional bodies and promote mutual respect among them. So, in essence, it's about the constitutional culture of dialogue between institutions in order to avoid the conflicts. And it is also about the culture of the citizens, in order to not confuse the people, the officials, with the institution. We just discussed on our way before this session, before this debate, about the importance of the culture of the citizen, to not confuse the people with the institution, to not think that they deserve something because they are in that position. So it's another issue to have in mind, to be aware when we discuss about the constitutional perspective and also about the education. As in terms of organization of the electoral process, I'll stay two more minutes and so on. As in terms of organization of electoral process, there are a lot of factors that we could take into account. For example, along with the transparency and communication, it is important to offer equal opportunities for the competitors to provide and to their electoral platform. For example, in Romania, years ago, the Constitutional Court sanctioned a situation when the competitors in the presidential elections did not have equal time allocated on national television to present their platform. We can discuss here about protecting the electoral processes from disinformation, fake news. We discuss also in the opening of the forum and also in our conference this week at the University Titu Maiorescu with our colleagues from Ukraine about this danger of the fake news. Do we really have instruments to prevent and to control this phenomenon? I don't know. And once again, I will mention here the importance of clear laws and very simple procedures in order to not confuse the people when they come to vote. From this perspective, it is debatable to organize different types of elections in the same time. As concerns the electoral campaign, I would like to request some help somehow. Dragos knows. Because in this meeting it is about debates, raising issues, but also to show you our day-to-day work and how we I don't know, as a professor, because we have a huge responsibility in this regard, how we involve young people to study and to learn about democracy. These days, some of my students were awarded for their research. And we didn't know it was happened that this research is really on topic of this debate. That's why I chose to invite them, if you agree, to say a few words about this research and to introduce themselves, to express and to show us Why the idea of this research, the methodology and the results of this research? They are awarded with the first prize for this paper entitled "The Color of Good Faith in Electoral Campaigns from the Perspective of the Citizens." Allow me to invite them for I don't know, a few minutes to introduce them and to say a few words. They worked hard for this paper, and I'm really happy, and I congratulate them.
Good encouragement. Thank you for coming, and can't wait to hear your thoughts. Go.
My name is Emanuel Stoican, and I study law and political science, specializing in international relations and European studies. And alongside my colleague Constantin Iulian Tănașcu, who also studies law and has a strong background in economics, it's our privilege to share our scholarly inquiry titled "The Color of Good Faith in Electoral Competition." Our inquiry began with one fundamental question: what constitutes good faith in the context of electoral campaigns, and how does it manifest in contemporary democratic societies? To discover this enigma, we delved into diverse perspectives, going from legal frameworks to sociological analysis. So we had a survey, a quest upon 860 people who responded, and we delved into some diverse conclusions and also recommendations. Drawing upon scholarly discourse and legal doctrine, we also articulated a comprehensive definition of good faith as the inner conviction of individuals that their actions align with moral and legal norms. Through a rigorous survey of public perception, we sought to gauge the pulse of society, not necessarily to critique the political class, and regarding the principle of good faith in electoral campaigns, of course. As we reflect upon our odyssey through the realm of electoral integrity and so on, one thing stays abundantly clear: the imperative for reform and renewal is paramount. The preservation of democratic ideals hinges upon a collective commitment to upholding the principles of transparency, ethics, and accountability. And of course, as a footnote, we reached to 5 big conclusions that could also be found in our article: absence of partisan color in good faith, lack of essential traits in political class, focus on electoral victory over citizen needs, lack of legal accountability, and of course need for legislative reform and civic education, because in order to address these challenges, there's an urgent need for the legislature and regulating the conduct of politicians and parties during electoral campaigns.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good research.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So no color for good faith in electoral campaign. According to their study, all the citizens, they require to all the parties involved in the political campaign, to all competitors, to have good faith and constitutional loyalty. So it's about this trust, to build this trust. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you, University Professor Marieta Safta, for bringing also a practical example and also for sharing your experience. I'd like to underline 3 aspects that are also my personal favorites: the idea of an electoral code, legal certainty, again, and really nice idea, and you really put it in a diplomatic way, not confuse people with an institution. I think that should be a motto of some sort. But really, really thank you for the contribution. And moving on, as I told you before, we're going to have a Romanian perspective, an European continent perspective, an EU perspective, an international perspective. Moving on, and right now, maybe you know, it's an important topic, the negotiations that are taking place between the Republic of Moldova and the European Union. And we have a specialist with us, Ms. Cortac Olga, Director of Administrative Science, Legal Research Center for Moldova. I'm going to ask her to help us out with the perspective, and the perspective is gained through the negotiations that are taking place between the European Union and Moldova. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's likewise a big pleasure for me to join the event, and I'd be very happy in the next couple of minutes to share a short perspective on the Republic of Moldova. Our colleague presented us a few of theoretical things and backgrounds for democracy and elections, but I would like to go on with a study case, if I may call it, and present a couple of things about our country, Republic of Moldova, who has been very much into the public discussion on the European continent, especially for the last 2 years since the Russian aggression in Ukraine started. And why I'm mentioning this? Because a few weeks after it started, Ukraine, together with Moldova, they submitted the EU accession request, which for Moldova marked a very important path on its development, democracy improvement, and country development, if I may say. Well, it all started in March 2022 with a candidate status country received in June 2022, along with which the European Commission issued a report saying that Moldova has an important homework to do if the country wants to join the European Union, exactly like other countries had to do when they passed through the same process. So there were a couple of conditionalities that Moldova had to follow, had to improve different things, and they concerned mainly the justice reform, fight against corruption, the oligarchization, anti-money laundering, public administration reform, public money administration, good management of public resources, and improvement of electoral legal framework. Where I would like to stop my attention today, because as per the report issued by the European Commission last November, when they advised that Moldova and Ukraine start the negotiations with EU, almost all the conditionalities were achieved, with a couple of but still to do some things and to improve a couple of things. So I would like to stop my presentation on two most important areas, and the first of them will be the justice reform, and we, as Dragoș said in the beginning, will tackle a little bit the trust of citizens into justice. The European Commission said that Moldova should take care very well about its justice reform, and especially to ensure a transparent process and a merit-based process when it comes to appoint people into justice administrative bodies, when it comes to appointing judges, prosecutors, those who take care that the democracy and the rule of law it's respected as it should be. So we had to start an important process, and probably majority of you knows that we are currently undergoing an external evaluation of the justice system, meaning that there is a special commission formed by national and international experts, independent commission, which evaluates each and every candidate for a position within the justice governing bodies, and here I'm talking about Superior Council of Magistracy, Superior Council of Prosecutors, which was successfully achieved, and we have now independent and evaluated people occupying these positions. And when I'm talking about the evaluation, I'm mainly talking about their financial and ethical integrity, so that we need this kind of people for ensuring proper democracy in our countries. So this was successfully achieved. Moldova is currently undergoing Supreme Court of Justice reform, and then if this is achieved, we can say we did a good homework at this point. But there is always a but. There is still a lot to be done. We still have failed to name a general prosecutor. There was an attempt early in this year to appoint a general prosecutor for Moldova, and the process unfortunately seemed to be nice, with a prosecutor elected but it seemed it was not transparent, so they had to annul the results of the contest, and Moldova still doesn't have a general prosecutor appointed. A couple of updates were made to the legislation, to the rules applied to selection of the general prosecutor. There was a new contest announced, which had the deadline exactly 3 days ago, and we can't wait to see how the process will go, and if this is achieved, we can consider we are on a good path. Still a lot of work to be done. The external evaluation of the justice system is still undergoing. There is currently an evaluation of judges and prosecutors, which started recently. But we are committed and we are dedicated to this, because everyone is aware about the importance of this exercise for the democracy and the independence of the country. The second point I wanted to talk about, because I'll not talk anymore about fight against corruption, about the oligarchization and other stuff. Probably these are very well known also in other countries, and probably this homework stays still available for many of us, how to find proper instruments to fight and to implement them effectively. And probably with another occasion we can exchange good practices among us, because there is a lot to be learned from different countries. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the updates of the electoral legislation, which were also homework for Moldova under the preparation for the negotiations opening. There was a mission of OSCE and the DIR coming to Moldova a couple of years ago. They issued a report and they made a couple of recommendations for us to improve the legislation. Such a process took place, so our legislators initiated the process and we adopted a new electoral code in December 2022. Perhaps if I'm presenting them right away, it will be nothing innovative and nothing new for you, but among others, they had made changes into the electoral legislations when it comes to composition and methods of appointment of the Central Electoral Commission. The new electoral code also allows today to have elections for 2 days in certain electoral districts or polling stations. And the subjects that can now participate into elections in Moldova can also be initiative groups and electoral blocks. So nothing new, nothing so innovative, but still very important for our way to proper democracy and well-being of each and every citizen, if I may say this way. A few practical things with regards to elections, and this is how I'm going to conclude my presentation about Moldova. We are, like Romania and other countries, undergoing elections this year. Everything started with local elections last November. We are going to have presidential elections this October and parliamentary elections next summer. What I'm naming all of them, it is probably one of the most important periods in Moldova's history since our independence 33 years ago. And this October, together with the presidential elections, there is going to be a referendum calling out for our citizens to express their options if they support or not the European accession. So it will be probably the most important exam, if I may call it this way, for our politicians and for everyone who fights for democracy when citizens will answer. My assumption and my hope is that there will be a strong yes for it. My fear is that not enough people will attend it, because we need 1/3 of people who are today on the electoral list to be present, and considering the huge migration which took place in Moldova for the last years, and considering the influence that we face today and the fight that we have today against some intentions from abroad, from countries like Russia, to destabilize the situation in Moldova, considering some people like Shor, of whom you may probably have heard, who is an oligarch who ran away from Moldova because he has a couple of criminal cases due to his activities to destabilize the country, but he is still trying to influence a lot the situation in the country. So there are a couple of important things to be considered in this regard. There is an important period of time when our authorities, civil society, and each and every member of our society has to work a lot and to prepare for this important exercise. However, we hope it will bring the country where it has to be, and it will be an important starting point for our way on the European path. Thank you.
Wonderful audience. I'm going to ask you another question. Can we learn from mistakes? I believe yes. No, this is a question for the audience. So if you believe that we can learn from mistakes, please raise your hand. Mistakes, yes. Because one of the most impressive things that Ms. Quartac presented to us is that they initially started a procedure in order to name a general prosecutor. They noticed that transparency was lacking. They noticed that they can do it better, and they started all over again. And that takes strength, democratic strength. And thank you very much for presenting that example. Continuing, and a big round of applause for that idea and for our presenter. Moving on to an EU perspective, because, okay, maybe you are familiar with the fact that in 2024, most of the population of this world is going to the polls. They're going to elect. And their decision will have greater impact upon the entire globe and upon the direction of our decision-making process, of our electoral process and democracy. But a huge part of this population lives right here. It's among us. It's right us, the European Union. And in order for us to better understand this process, I'm going to ask Professor Ovidiu Dumitru, Dean of Faculty of Law, to present a bit of idea around the European Union and its electoral process. Thank you very much for coming. We are listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dragos. Now, before going to the elections this year at European Parliament, I noted down some thoughts my colleague, Professor Marieta Safta, pointed out, because they are connected to the European elections. We had some amendments in our country due to, as Dragos said, we have a year with many elections, happened to have 4 types of elections in 1 year. That's math. In the end, we cannot change that. And those amendments raise some questions. And yes, we start also questioning ourselves if by changing the dates of elections, by changing the electoral law, we may affect somehow the way the citizens are seeing some people in some positions where they're seeing somehow those persons candidating in the right way. Because when you have at the same time European elections with national, in our case local elections, clearly you have 2 campaigns, clearly you have different types of people present themselves to the population, and in that moment you start raising if the government and others had the right reasons to come with those amendments. Now we are not questioning, in the end we have a constitutional court. Those questions were addressed from the legal point of view to this court, and we had an answer from there. So as professors, as lawyers, as citizens, we have the answer at least from this point of view. Still, as professors, I think both of European law, we may actually question ourselves if we have the right representation in the end trust as after the electoral procedure takes place in those members of the European Parliament, if actually we are not somehow not misled but confused by the electoral campaign which takes place theoretically 1 month before the electoral moment. Practically, of course, with each one presenting, and here I go a bit to the second point that Professor Saftar raised, with the people who are in certain positions. And of course, having different activities nowadays, being more present maybe than they were before, mistakenly not seeing that person as at the position and not seeing just as a candidate. Now, I may say that each one has, of course, a certain activity in the last years, 5 or 4, and this can be an advantage or disadvantage. In the end, the citizens have seen this person present in all these years. They should have the maturity to evaluate the activity not from the last months, but for the last years. So, yeah, we have to be careful. We have to be careful also if, at least in Romania nowadays, we have those persons who are clearly closer to the people, more present, and being in political parties, somehow deviating from the ones who are candidates for the European Parliament. So yes, we may have some tractors, we may have some of them being more present than maybe the candidates for the European Parliament in that moment, with the votes collected by the parties, affecting or disaffecting somehow their presentation of the candidates for the European elections. So yes, a question may be raised. I was thinking, for instance, a dean. We have exams in a certain moment, because we are finalizing our first generation. The studies are finalized over there, and we have to go to Iași and have the exam. They have a different calendar than us. So we have to change us and to respect the law of education, which says that we have to have 3 weeks of exams. Because they have a different calendar. They pushed a bit for our final year students to have 1 week per each exam and not maybe 2 weeks as they deserved. At a certain moment, there were exams like a 2 days exam in order to go with this and of course pursue with what we have in the law, and also to allow them to be present. So at the moment we went anyway on 9th of June, and in that moment we had to change it. Why? Because we thought about this. Okay, our students are not only from Bucharest. They want to vote to both the European elections and the national ones, the local ones. Being local, in that moment they have to go back home and vote. So we changed. We had a new board and a new meeting of our council, and we changed the day for to not to affect the right to vote. In that moment, we realized, at least me and others, that this may actually be happening in other cases, and yeah, placing at the same date those elections may affect maybe the right to vote. As I said earlier, we have an answer to these questions, at least from the constitutional point of view, but the reality, we have to accept it. Now, going back to the second, anyway, and for what I was anyway called here, trust of the European citizens in the European Parliament, and how actually they sent the people from the national level in this institution. As we know, European Parliament wasn't as powerful as it is from the beginning. It had just a consultative role. In time, the states realized that those institutions are really working. Now, we remember very well the cases from 60s when Vangelos Costa, which raised some constitutional questions over there, the Italian constitution a bit versus the treaties, and they realized, maybe the Pandoras, maybe they haven't planned this from the beginning, that they realized that those institutions have to work. And in order to work, they have to involve the citizens and to give more power to the people. And in that moment, the parliament, treaty by treaty, and even between treaties in the 70s, became more involved in the legislative process, in all the consultation, even at international level. In 79, based on the decision to create general elections, we have the first ones, and from that moment, at 5 years, we have general elections, and we sent not delegates, but we sent candidates that we select as being the best to represent our interests at European level. Moreover, we have 90s, Maastricht, Amsterdam, Nice, and the other treaties that came after, and especially Lisbon, when the Parliament got more involved in the decisional process. So next to the Council, which well, we know very well represents the interests of the states, we have the citizens working together with the states in taking the decision on our matters. Now, I'm a teacher of company law, of business law, and of EU law, but clearly I'm guided more by the private area, and that's why I'm teaching more European business law. And I'll go with this area and just to realize why the Parliament had to go and be more involved in order to pursue with this goal. And the goal, for instance, one of the goals there is 114, making a functioning single market. Well, in the moment the institutions have, and I say have because it's their duty to make for us a single market that is actually functional, in that moment, of course, the actors have to have the power. In that moment, we have to send the people in the European Parliament to select the best instruments for us to have this single market. Single market, of course, means what? Means merchants, means consumers, means also national authorities and others. In order to do that, we have a co-decision procedure, which now is the ordinary procedure, so we have the Parliament there getting more and more involved. And the question is, do we actually send the right people? Can we actually trust the electoral procedure that we have at EU level that selects the best people to take the best decisions together with the states, but in the end the states have the tendency, in the case law at EU level proved us, to protect a bit themselves and their interests. We have states who at the beginning empower so much the institutions that have the period in which we have a strong piece of legislation at EU level, but we have also periods in which the states started restraining the institutions from acting. In that moment, the Parliament has to work for the best interests of the citizens. And here we have a question that has started raising after Amsterdam Treaty. Why? In Maastricht, we have a provision, Maastricht Treaty, which says that we should have a uniform general procedure for the electoral system. And they tried, we had 2 summits. In the end, they finalized, we had we are not these as Romanians. And in Amsterdam, we got to certain common principles. To vote in the same day, to have only one vote, to allow non-residents to stand as candidates. Well, are those as powerful to prove us that actually we can trust how we select our members of the European Parliament? Because normally we should have, as close as you can, the same procedural, the same electoral system in all member states. Well, if we start investigating, you'll notice that we have different ways to stand as a candidate, even to candidate, what means residency, what means domicile. In some states it's lighter, in others it's stricter. How we are allowed to create political parties, who actually can candidate if just a member of the parliament, of the political party, or an independent, how many actually we need over there to back us up in the elections, and so on. So in that moment we start questioning if the parliament succeeded as an actor after Maastricht in certifying this idea of representation and having the right representation at EU level. If not, the states actually still are the ones deciding nationally. I have to inform you, and I'll finalize here, that I'm also a former legislator. I was a deputy in the Romanian Parliament, that's not at EU level. And as I candidated in the only elections where we had the uninominal election in Romania in 2012. And it was different than the others. We got back to the list. So again, at EU level, we have to have a system, either one or the other, or even mixed. So in that moment, of course, when I noticed how the person became more important and how actually he presented ideas, then where you stand on the list of the political party. So then the states decide which one you have. Do you go over there as a person, present yourself, or the political party presents a list, and of course the political party, going back to what I started, maybe together with other elections at that moment may influence or not the votes finally to that person allocated to that list. So just some questions to be raised again on trust. I believe that Romania in the last 20 years, yes, amended a lot the electoral law, but I think also got to a certain maturity not to question so much the trust, but question somehow the method that we are using to have the right representation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation that was focused from my point of view on the best interest of the citizen. And it's really nice that the entire institution, through your voice, managed to adapt the dates and put that into questioning. The access of the student to the electoral right and also access to education. Really nice presentation, thank you very much. And continuing our delving within the democratic process, I'm going to ask another question: how to encourage genuine trust in both democracy and in elections? And for this type of questions, I'm going to ask University Professor Edna Raquel to give us a perspective from the international context. Thank you very much for being here. We are eagerly awaiting your ideas. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Great pleasure being here with you, listen so many good things and important reports. Yes, how to encourage genuine trust in elections and democracy. And so I'm from Brazil. I'm a professor from Brazil. I decided to give you an insight from my country with 3 key words: trust, for sure, democracy, but also citizenship. In fact, I want to talk about citizenship, but I'd like to start reading an excerpt from the book entitled Window on Chaos from Cornelius Castoriadis. The democratic project is the yet unrealized effort to embody in institutions as much as possible individual and social autonomy. In other words, the project goes hand in hand to emergence and affirmation of society's capacity to question its institutions and change them. In philosophical terms, democracy is the regime of reflexivity. This means that democracy presupposes that there is no revelation, but also that there is no absolute knowledge, the political episteme, as Plato believed, and many others after him. Democracy is the regime of doxa, of reflected opinion, aiming at phronesis, concrete wisdom. It is because democracy is the regime of doxa that it must resort to voting and accept the opinion of the majority. A solution that can never be philosophically founded, but is imposed by pragmatic phronesis. So, I've told you that I would speak about democracy, but I will speak too of building citizenship. And let me tell you a bit history of the building of citizenship in my country. Just because I've told Professor Marietta about this and she didn't know. So let me tell you. The history of Brazilian democracy and its electoral process requires to go back to the time when Brazil became independent from Portugal in 1922. We still had slaves. And I don't know if you know, Brazil was the last country in the world to end slavery in 1888, the last one. The following year, the Republic was proclaimed and a new constitution was needed. But the Brazilian elite found itself faced with a major problem. Our governments had great problem. The million of freed slaves, how to keep them outside of full citizenship in an inferior situation to the white people. How to maintain them out of citizenship. The big idea was to demand that to be a voter or a candidate in the elections, you had to know how to read and write. Oh, and at the same time, they removed the right to education and health from the new constitutional text that was approved in 1891. Can you imagine? We are talking about building citizenship. The consequence of this narrow view of our powerful elite is that in addition to excluding the poor people from political life, who coincidentally were also black men, and I say black men because women couldn't vote or be elected until 1932. And so this decision made Brazil the world record holder of illiteracy for decades and decades. And only in 1988 did the new constitution, created after 20 years of a military dictatorship, authorize voting illiterates who, despite all public policies aimed at education, still represent almost 10% of our population. Brazil's population exceeds 211 million inhabitants. So, when we think about trusting voting process, we have first to think about citizens. to give power to the people, as the other professor told us. What kind of power? The minimum is education. Because if you don't have a reasonable condition of choosing your life, your destiny, it is impossible for you even to trust. I hope, yes, for sure, it's not your situation. And so when we say that we are developing in Brazil a new scenario, and democracy is super, incredible, important to create this new scenario. I'm talking about, first of all, building citizenship. I think that is much more important than laws, norms. Because if people can't analyze the meaning of the roles, people can accept everything you give to them. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Edna. Thank you very much. And I like to admit that I like two ideas that really caught my attention. I was able to understand the entire presentation just based on them, that democracy has no absolute truth. Citizenship is just as important as any other concept, even maybe it's kind of the essence of all of them. And the fact that we need to have the capacity to question our institutions, and that's really valuable. And thank you very much. And continuing on this aspect, I've always been interested, and probably you share my opinion, that we need to know more about fairness, transparency, and security based on public policies. And for this, my special guest today, Professor Osvaldo, will tell us a couple of comments and ideas and practical things that we can use. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm from Brazil too. I'm a professor, and I'll talk a little bit about how to promote trust. And in this way, I think that fairness, transparency, and security, it's something important to find trust in institutions. So I will talk about the measures of Brazilian Superior Electoral Court to combat disinformation in these three perspectives. These initiatives are essential to preserve the integrity of the electoral process and ensure that voters can make informed decisions free from the influence of false information. Brazil suffers too much with fake news, too much, especially with the use of social media and communication apps, like WhatsApp. Brazil will have, in this year, municipal elections. And the role of judiciary, it's very important to make ground of this kind of trust in a voter perspective. And so I will list some of the main actions and initiatives of our Superior Electoral Court to make this truth real, concrete. The first one is regulations updates on elections of this year. In March, the Superior Court approved some new regulations aimed to update electoral propaganda. These updates are very important in addressing the modern challenges posed by technology and disinformation. A key innovation is the regulation of artificial intelligence used in political campaigns. Artificial intelligence can create deepfakes and other misleading content, and these new regulations aim to stop these practices. So we have prohibition of deepfakes. Deepfakes now is banned in Brazil, officially banned. Candidates found using deepfakes could have their candidacy or mandate revoked. We have too the need of disclosure of artificial intelligence use. Campaigns must now disclose when artificial intelligence is used in their advertisements. This transparency helps voters understand when they are interacting with or viewing AI-generated content. Also, we have a restriction on bots. The new rules also restrict the use of bots to simulate interaction with candidates, ensure that voters are not deceived by automatic responses. Another important improvement is big tech accountability. This is very important. Platforms are now held responsible for not quickly removing harmful content. These include disinformation, hate speech, and content promoting ideologies against democracy like Nazism and fascism. The second measure is the creation of integrated center for combating disinformation and defense of democracy. Established in March of this year, this center aims to coordinate efforts to combat disinformation and hate speech in all electoral periods. The integrated center will facilitate cooperation between the electoral justice system, public bodies, and private entities, including social media platforms and messaging services, ensuring the enforcement of new regulations. Another important improvement is real-time communication. During this year's elections, the integrated center will maintain real-time communication with all 27 Brazilian regional electoral courts, increasing the ability to respond quickly to false information. And finally, we have educational campaigns. The center will also organize education campaigns against disinformation and hate speech, promoting democracy and the role of electoral justice in the country. The third measure promoted was the electoral disinformation alert system, a digital system. The most important innovation of this system is citizen involvement. The alert system was launched in June of 2022 to empower citizens to report misleading content. The system allows individuals to actively participate in identifying and combating disinformation. And how it works. People can submit reports via Electoral Superior Court portal, listing various types of disinformation. These reports are then evaluated by digital platforms and authorities to determine if they violate laws or platform policies. It's important to say that by involving people, the system helps monitor and reduce the spread of false information, ensuring a more transparent electoral environment. Finally, another important measure is the Disinformation Combat Program. This initiative deals with the damage effects of false narratives on the electoral justice, on the electronic voting systems, on the various stages of the electoral process. The program has over 150 partners, including social media platforms, public and private institutions, and professional organizations. The program's partners are public universities, startups, trade associations such as the Brazilian Association of Radio and Television Broadcasters, the Brazilian Press Association, and the Brazilian Internet Association. Partners assist to monitoring and exposing false information, disseminating correct information, and educating the public on how to identify and report false content. This clarification is disseminated to the population through the fato ou boato, fact or rumor website. Finally, it's important to say that Superior Court tried to provide citizen guidance on elections. In collaboration with the Brazilian Federal Court of Accounts, the Electoral Court provides citizens with 5 essential tips for identifying and avoiding the spread of false narratives. The first one is question information. Always verify details and sources before sharing any content. Second, check multiple sources. Look for validation for reputable news outlets to ensure the information is real. The next, verify dates. Ensuring the information is current and contextually precise, as outdated or misplaced content can be misleading. Access language. Be cautious of sensationalistic language and grammatical errors, which are common in fake news. And the last one is detect deepfakes. Stay vigilant about content that may be digitally manipulated to distort reality. In conclusion, the Brazilian Superior Court approach to combating disinformation involves 1. Update regulations. 2. Fostering interinstitutional cooperation. And 3. Empowering citizens to identify and report false content. I think that these measures are essential for safeguarding the integrity of the electoral process and ensuring informed democratic participation. Through these efforts, the Superior Court aims to create a fair and more transparent electoral environment, protecting the fundamental right of voters to make decisions based on real and reliable information. It's the real building of trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like also to thank Professor Osvaldo for sharing his experience, and also really nice that you managed to present to us the part with the prevention, which is focused on education, and it brought me into mind the experiment that Professor Marieta Safta presented with our students, and on reactive measures that centered on AI, disinformation, and messaging utility, and accountability, which is the most important thing. And I also like to thank our audience. You are great. You also replied to the questions. I'm sure that you have lots of comments and ideas. Maybe you can get the time outside freely. As I told you before, these are specialists that devoted their life to protecting democracy in the upper echelons of authorities, in education system, and in law system. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for sharing your ideas, and have a pleasant day.